Hello, my name is Lipa and welcome back to another curtain reformation video. For this video, the setup's a bit different. We're in a bed because in this video, I'm making pajamas. Specifically, these pajamas. I was gonna try to fool you that... Sorry about my sock. And I was gonna try to fool you that I yanked an actual pair of curtains that I've had for a while, but it didn't end up looking anything like they were actually attached to a window. So I feel obligated to say that I thrifted these curtains last Christmas for about $4. So I did manage to make pretty cheap pajamas. And why are we making pajamas? During this time when we need to stay inside, we need to stay comfy and sustainable. But without further ado, let's get into this video. So I had never made pajamas before, I had never made any type of pants, and so I wanted to use a pattern, but the only one I could find in my house were for small kids, and yes, my body proportions are basically that of a kid, but not a small kid. But I decided to use them anyways and just trace out the pattern and then freestyle enlarge them, which didn't turn out super great, but we'll get to that. Okay, so first up is we're making this pattern. Oh my god. What is this? It moved. Okay. So yeah, I realized I had this cutout pattern for a pair of pants that I never used, and they look pretty similar to the tiny pajama pants, so I decided to make my life a bit easier and use those front and back pant pieces instead. Oh, mistake number one. When I was enlarging the pajama jacket, I made it very much too large, but you know, this was kind of a happy mistake because I decided to use almost all of it to gather it, making it super comfortably oversized in like a nightgown fashion. Now for the sleeves. I already had one pattern for like an extra large sleeve, which I really wanted, and just drew out the top from the pajama pattern. Then for the collar, I had no idea how much larger I should have made it, so I just made it very much too large, and then after cutting it out on the fabric, I fixed it. So then I pinned and cut those pieces out on my folded curtain. Oh, I totally forgot I used two curtains, and they were about 150 wide and 2 meters long. So I tried cutting all the pieces out as sparingly on the fabric as possible. I ended up using almost all of it. I made pockets as well and a sleeve mask. This is not the proper way of cutting out a collar on a fold, but this was the only place on the spare fabric that I could, and that is why it turned out really strange looking, but I fixed it in the end. Because I wanted some stuffing in the sleeve mask to give it structure, I used this old airplane merch that has definitely seen better days, and traced out around it and then sewed it in the sleeve mask. Now this is just me flexing, but look how good I freehanded this pocket. It literally turned out almost identical to the sketch I made to the left. So I cut out 4 pieces of those. So I did realize there are different ways of stitching together a pair of pants, and having a leg inside of a leg just felt way out of my league, so I decided to attach the 2 front pieces together, right sides together by the crotch, and then did the same for the 2 back pieces. And at the same time, I pinned the 4 pockets where I wanted them to each front and back pant piece. And I sewed both crotches down and the pockets. Then I press the seams open, and since this fabric is fraying quite a bit, I will zigzag over the edges later on. Same goes for all the seams in this video. I was just too eager to finish the PJs, so I've saved it for last. Then I put the front piece on top of the back piece, right sides together, and pinned down the 2 outer edges of my pants, and pinned the 2 pockets as well. Important here was to really match the very bottom of the legs. Then I went back to the machine and sewed everything in place using a straight stitch. Then the clouds outside my window were really pretty, like proper cotton candy, so I decided to capture it and make this part a little less boring. Then I pinned the two pieces together by the crotch, and again it was important to really match them up by the seams. And then I pinned down the two inner sides of the pants. And as for this misfortunate volunteer pincushion, I would 9 out of 10 not recommend. I was positively stabbed, but I'll give it 1 point for looking a bit edgy. Then I sewed that down. Now it was time to make it fitted and all scrunched up, so I took a decently wide elastic and made sure it was fitted, but definitely in a comfortable, non-squeezing way. Then along the entire top of the pants, I folded in about 1 centimeter, about half an inch of the right side of the fabric. Then I pinned it not so thoroughly and sewed it down with a straight stitch, with the longest stitch length on my machine. Then I measured the width of my elastic to know how wide I need to make the channel to fit the elastic through. So I took the width of the elastic and added just a few millimeters, maybe half a centimeter, 1/5 of an inch, and that's how much I folded down of the right side of the fabric this time. So I pinned that down on the outside, the right side of the pant. I measured it on the inside though because I found it easier. Then I sewed that down with a straight stitch with a long stitch length at first because I wanted to make sure the elastic could fit through properly. Once I saw that it did, I went back and sewed it down with a regular straight stitch length. I left one little opening where I could insert the elastic. I pinned a safety pin to one end of the elastic and then fed it through the channel all the way around to the other side. I made sure it didn't get twisted and that the other end of the elastic didn't get pulled through as well. Once it was out on the other side, I pinned the two ends together. Then I sewed that down real sturdy with 2 zigzag stitches. And lastly, I sewed down the opening, making sure not to sew into the elastic. Now moving on to our jacket. I don't know if it should be called a jacket, but I wouldn't call it a sweater, nor would I call it a blazer. Because I cut out the back piece with the bottom of the curtain hem out of convenience, I had to replicate that hem on the 2 front pieces as well as I could. So first I folded in about half a centimeter at 1/5 of an inch, pinned and sewed it down with a long stitch length. Then I measured how wide the curtain hem was and then folded this new hem over again that wide and pinned, and then I decided to be even more of a time-consuming perfectionist and drew a straight line right across where I was going to sew. And because I had placed the pins on the wrong side out of convenience, I now swiftly moved them over to the right side. Then I sewed that down with a regular straight stitch. Appreciation pause for my peachy socks. Okay, so then I did the same exact thing for the other front piece. Then I had to press it down real smooth to get that crisp edge. Sorry, I'm basically just throwing around adjectives that belong in the kitchen. Now, I know this may look like these chunks of fabrics could actually make 2 PJ jackets for me, but you are absolutely right, they might have. But as previously stated, my intention was to gather it all cute and have it be oversized and flowy like a nightgown, so you just wait and see. So anyways, I pinned those 2 front pieces to the back at the sides and shoulders, right sides together. Then I also began hemming the front of the jacket's front pieces, where I was going to place small buttons. Then I brought the chunk full of needles to the machine and sewed everything down with a straight stitch. Then I finished off the hemwork, making it about 2.5 centimeters, about 1 inch wide. While we're at it, just incidentally, should we talk about my nails? Yes, I believe we should. So I have never really had long nails before, I think mainly because I always break them somehow, not even necessarily doing anything. Oh, and then I sewed that down, regular straight stitch. In this quarantine though, I haven't been up too much, so I've just worn a trillion coats of nail polish and worked pretty well keeping them protected. Now, I don't really like long nails on myself. I don't really think it suits my hands, if it makes sense, but like I feel a bit more confident with long nails, and the bigger the nail, the more nail polish you can fit on there, which is always nice. I don't know where I'm going with this, just hopefully you think, ooh, those are cute nails, and it makes every clip a bit cuter. Hopefully you're not like, ooh, I'm only watching this because I'm ready to see one of them claws snap. 2 of them did during this project. I was quite sad, but I'm starting over. So when that was done, I sewed with the longest stitch length again along the entire very top of the jacket, no back stitching. Then I lightly pulled on the top thread to gather this big chunk. So is this mistake number 2 or 3 of this video? And don't mind them please, you learn from your mistakes, so I should be learning a lot. Anyways, I did realize after a while that I had very greatly overestimated my shoulder length, so I had to cut a lot of it, including the armhole. On top of this, I decided it would just be cute if it had a triangular shape and it just grew wider and wider towards the bottom, you know, in a flowy way. So I took it in a bit at the sides as well and cut it diagonally towards the bottom of the jacket, then pinned and sewed it together again. Now moving along to the sleeves, I pinned each one right sides together and sewed. Then I put the sleeve inside the armhole, right sides together, pinning on the wrong side of the jacket. Then I sewed down both sleeves in place inside the armholes. Because I had made the sleeves nice and overly long, I invented, or rather improvised, I shouldn't be so bold, this folded thingy that looked cute and was practical because you can fold it down to make it slightly longer. I'm talking slightly, very small difference. But so basically fold in a big piece of it, then fold that out again the width that you like, but keep just a piece of it on the inside, then sew that down with a straight stitch. It basically just looks like you folded it in yourself, which is always cute, but it stays in place. Now, as I said before, the odd-looking collar was in need of a bit of a makeover. I had to make it a great deal smaller, so I just tried it on around my neck at this point and made sure it looked good but would still sit loosely. Before sewing the two collar pieces together, I wanted a cute lace detail to stick out of it, and lucky for me, I had some saved that I'd found in a charity shop many months ago that was just the perfect width and definitely long enough. I gathered it a bit to add that ruffle detail, same process as with the top of the jacket. Now, perfectly inserting it, evenly gathering it, and pinning it between the two collar pieces right sides together, the bottom of the lace facing inwards, was about as tricky as it was to understand this sentence. So what I did was first I sewed it down with the longest stitch length, a basting stitch, so it would be easy to seam rip if anything looked weird. It did come out uneven in some places, so I did seam rip, then re-sew, and finally when I was content, I sewed it down on top of the basting stitch to secure everything in place. Then I pressed it down nice and crisp. And please do notice that my beautiful long nails have now deceased. And when pinning the collar to the jacket, I gathered the top to make sure it was the same length as the collar and arranged the gathers where I wanted them. I wanted the most gathering in the front and the center back. Then I sewed that down with a straight stitch. And the final steps, was to attach about 8 or so tiny snap buttons at the two front pieces of the jacket, which took forever, but I wanted it to look real neat, so I sewed them down to just one layer of the obviously double layered hem. I was devastated that my nails had to be real ugly at this point, the one up and personal scene we got, so I went ahead and painted them scarlet. I realized after a few buttons that they were the most secure if you sewed up and down the 4 holes in the circle instead of back and forth between 2 holes at a time. If this bloody thumb doesn't get you to subscribe, I bloody well don't know what will. Then highly improvised because I didn't know how to keep the collar seam in place inside the jacket because just pressing it down didn't work. I sewed it down on the outside of the jacket but hidden beneath the collar, so I don't think it's too bad. Now the final thing is the remade sleep mask. First I pinned the 2 elastics to each side of one layer of the mask with the right side up, and I made sure it wasn't twisted and sat straight. Then I put the second layer on top of it, right side down, and then on top of that the old sleep mask, but most importantly the padding, the soft pillow for the eyes, and then pinned all the layers together. Then I sewed that down, leaving a small section so I can turn it right side out. Lastly, I hand sewed that open section closed using an invisible stitch, which I can't really explain, so just watch please. Now get ready to get ready to run away, because something possessed me to have an awkward photo shoot in PJ's natural habitat. Not specifically my parents' bed, which this happens to be because my bed is tiny, just any bed. Okay, cut to the real photo shoot.